So I've talked a lot about what geology is and what a geologist does. But why should you even care? This is this is kind of the ultimate question for any class, isn't it? Or anything you even want to learn is why do you even need to care about it? How does it matter? And I don't think people realize just how much every single moment of your life is dictated or influenced by geology. For instance, water. I know one of the things we're going to be learning about during this physical geology class is the materials that make up Earth. Well, guess what? Water is one of those materials. And at least in its form like we know it, it only really happens at the surface. But it's essential. That's literally like the second most important thing for you, right? You need air, you need water, you need food and shelter, right? Water is incredibly important, but it's a geologic material. And so knowing where the water is, how it moves, knowing how a stream floods or doesn't, knowing how taking water out of the ground affects the ground's surface. It sinks. These are all parts of what we have to understand about geology just to stay alive. And there's lots of careers in water and in hydrology. It's important for economic resources, how we use those earth materials every day. So, this is an example of a car, right? Obviously, you need the petroleum just to make it go. So you can put gas and put oil in your car. But the tires are made out of petroleum products. Asphalt is usually petroleum based, but asphalt's actually a naturally occurring substance. You can go ahead and collect asphalt. The chrome on the tires, the aluminum in the body, even the glass in the windshield is made out of sand. It's made from quartz sand. And for us here in Arizona, that copper that's in all of the wiring throughout the entire car, that's super important. But there's even other things. Sand makes glass. Sand's also a huge need in the fracking industry to extract natural gas. Sand's huge money to refill beaches, especially at beach resorts. We're actually facing a sand shortage in the world because of all of that. Or even, some minerals that we use, like malachite and azurite, or even turquoise. All of those have copper in it. And that makes, the copper in the wiring or the copper in our money. Fluorite. Fluorite is a beautiful mineral. It's actually used to extract fluoride to put in toothpaste and protect your teeth. Have you ever heard of diatomaceous earth? I know a lot of people use it around here in the desert to help keep away scorpions. Diatoms, that's actually just the little petrified bodies of dead ocean animals. They're teeny tiny ones, right? But that's a geologic material. And at this point, with so much created from petroleum products, we rely on these a lot. What about just safety? Right? There's all sorts of geologic hazards that occur, and I've got some examples. There's a map of earthquakes in Arizona. The top left picture, the people in the yellow jackets and hard hats, those are debris flow deposits in Flagstaff post the Schultz Pass fire. To the right of it is Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and this is after their major earthquake. On the bottom right, there's a lot of stuff on fire. That's actually the Japan 2011 tsunami. And to the left of that is a flash flood here in the desert Southwest. There's a lot of things that the earth can do to kill you. I actually teach a whole class on it. So if you're into these things, there's a geologic disasters class. But there's a lot of ways that the earth kind of puts you in peril, and understanding that and where it happens and why it happens. You can save hundreds of thousands, millions of lives over time by understanding, the geology. What about home values? The American dream is to buy you a house with a little white picket fence, right? It's probably one of the most expensive things you're ever going to buy. However, while the earth is trying to kill you, it's also trying to take down your home as well. And so these are examples of how geology has really affected home prices. The top right is a beachside house. I think that's Southern California. You can see where the waves along the ocean have eroded the cliff back. So that house is uninhabitable. The top middle is a house in Florida that was followed by a sinkhole, like right in the middle of the bullseye. I love that picture. The top left is an earth fissure. This is actually out in Queen Creek. On the bottom, that is foundation problems and foundation damage because of underground mines. Next to that, I believe that's a fault. That's a fault scarp the guy's standing next to. So the earth can mess up your house pretty quick. And that's not counting like everyday things like floods either. And we're here in Arizona, where copper and mining is big business. If you learn the 4 C's of Arizona, copper is one of those. And actually, the cotton comes down to the geology and how well it grows. The climate, it comes back to geologic and earth science processes. The citrus, again, that comes back to climate and geology. Cattle, it's pretty barren. A lot of rocks. Run some cows out there. Did I get them all? But copper is billions of dollars into the Arizona economy. From companies that are making money off of it, the people who work in the industry, all the way down to mineral collectors who really like copper-based minerals like the malachite, the azurite I was mentioning earlier. So it's huge amounts of revenue from taxes and people spending money and having jobs. What about entertainment? We're going to talk a lot about national parks. You got a whole project about it. But we tend to flock to the outside, to those geologic features, to, vacation, to enjoy rock climbing, or those are boats going through the Grand Canyon even. So entertainment, that's a huge draw, especially here in the western part of the United States. Do you like wine? You may not. That's okay. But if you're into wine, what in the world does geology have to do with wines? Well, first, geology is where you get your soil, and for people who grow wine grapes, the soil itself is really, really important. However, at least in California, some of the Sonoma Valley, where some of our premier wineries are, they had an earthquake. It's been in the last 10 years, but it actually did some pretty serious damage to one whole year worth of wine and aging and stuff. So that was kind of sad to see. How about golf? You like golf? I can do putt-putt. But golfing is directly the result of geology. Golfing got to start in Scotland, and those 2 golf courses at the bottom there, those are both really famous ones in Scotland. Apparently, though, the St. Andrews Old Course is literally where golf began. I know the one on the right has had a golf course since at least the 1600s. But the reason why it works here, and the reason why we have sand traps and hills and greens, the reason why all of that is there is because of the geologic history of northern Scotland. This is an area that was covered in continental glaciers during the last ice age. And all that finally sort of receded 15 to 18,000 years ago. And when those glaciers receded, rivers carried massive amounts of sand down. It gives you the sand. Then as the the plants and the life came back. You had grasslands. A lot of these that you find along the coast, which you see in the pictures here, they're actually along these big flat areas near the sea where they've popped up thanks to isostasy. It makes nice kind of coastal benches. So those retreating glaciers and the things like eskers and moraines that they left behind, and we'll learn about those later on. That's where you play golf. And so, if you go to play golf here in the valley, you go to the Waste Management Open, it's because they've brought out bulldozers to try to turn the Sonoran Desert into the Scotland Highlands. But I mentioned your own safety earlier, but the Earth has got a few things that could actually take care of a lot of us very quickly. There's a history of at least 5 major mass extinctions in Earth's history. Everybody sort of knows the Cretaceous one the best, when all the dinosaurs went extinct. However, it was big. But 250 million years ago, there was a much bigger one called the Permian extinction. And at that point, something like 95% of life on Earth went completely extinct. There was very little that made it out. So there's all sorts of big things the Earth can do too. And of course, if you want to be this person, and I am, rocks are pretty. We collect them. Sitting behind me on the shelves right now that you cannot see are boxes and tons of minerals and rocks and sand. I'm not joking. For me, I love them because they tell stories. And we'll talk a lot more, and I'll talk a lot more about how rocks tell stories as we go. But they're shiny, they're pretty, they're colorful. They're cool, right? And so, they're pretty. Sometimes that's enough. And we see that in our gemstones, which is obviously what's here, and that's a whole bunch of different types of minerals that are kind of into gemstones. We'll talk about that just a little bit when we get to minerals. But hopefully you've seen some of the ways that you're being influenced by geology even right now.